Welcome to the Game and Gadget podcast number 22. And of course, today I have with me Tony Warriner. Thank you again for joining us, Tony.
You're welcome.
One of the co-founders of Revolution Software, who's just successfully got a book through Kickstarter, which is always quite a feat. So we'll go into that in more detail in a moment. And also, we have Aaron Fothergill. How are you, sir?
Good. I haven't got a book to plug tonight, so it's not quite like Wogan, but...
This is your life. But we'll talk about your life in a moment, Ian, because you've had some vast development experience of various platforms, some more obscure than others. But in terms of topics for today, let's start with Mr. Warriner's book. So, Revolution, The Quest for Game Development Greatness is the title of the book. And at the end of it, you had 619 backers pledging £31,809, which probably a month ago would have been worth more due to the exchange rates, but still.
I don't say that.
But that's a good chunk of dough. So, first of all, congratulations, Tony. Well done. That was no small feat at all. So what in reality does that mean now you've hit that target? What comes next?
The big thing is printing. The thing about the book is it's slightly crazy in that it's 600 pages of and like 200 of them are photographs. So it's like incredibly expensive to print. I mean, it wouldn't get through a normal publisher in this form because it's too expensive. You know, they would say take the pictures out and make it into a normal book. The whole thing is, the premise was the only way this could be done like this is through a crowdfunding type thing. You know, where it's something that people the middlemen are all cut out, and you know that you're funding something that's expensive to create. You know. So, that was the premise, and the thing will be bloody nice, and it really will be when it's printed. But yeah, I look at the quotes for printing, and it's pretty scary, So, it doesn't make a lot of commercial sense, but it's the thing I wanted to make, and I've done it, So, it was lucky really that it did as well as it did, because there was the minimum pledge thing, the whatever it was that you have to meet. I mean, that was absolute minimum. It would have been, if it had just met that, it would have been a bit tight to say the least. Where it finally got to, it kind of makes sense. But I mean, it's not going to be profitable in any way. But I can do it, and there won't be a problem. So it's just I wanted to do the book. I did the book. It'll be really nice. There it is, and it did do well. It could have. You don't know what it's going to do. You could have sold like one copy to my parents. That's like the minimum, Or it could have, like Oprah could have been a secret fan of Revolution and tweeted about it, and it could have sold 1 million copies, and we'd have had to start building warehouses to put the books in. That's the other.
I was going to say there was a book under my chair for a minute.
That's one of those beware what you wish for things.
Exactly.
When you get just enough orders, you've got this. Cause the other problem with producing a book, and I know this one from experience of other people's books, of distributing them, is they're heavy things, and someone sends you a box of books to ship somewhere, and it takes forever to kind of unbox them and pack them, and it costs a fortune to post them. And that was a long time ago. That used to cost a fortune to post them. Now it's silly.
Well, that's a part of it, because these things. I'm gonna actually order 1,000 of them probably, because that's what I have to do with the pricing. Like I can't order 600 because it's double the price of like 1,000. So I'm gonna probably order 1,000, and like, what's the volume? What's the physical volume of that? It's going to be, I don't know. It's probably going to be 2 pallets worth or something like that. So I have to figure out what I'm doing.
It's big because it's a thick book as well. It's a lot of pages.
Well, the book weighs 2 kilograms, so and 1,000 times 1,000.
So 2 tons of books. 2 metric tons of books. What's the floor? What's the strength of your floor in your flat like then, Tony?
Well, it's more a case of what's the size of the floor in my flat, and probably not. Probably I'm gonna buy my parents dinner fairly soon, and ask them what's in their garage and front and spare room.
Yeah. So I now know what everybody's going to be getting as Christmas presents for the next 10 years.
Yeah, probably, yeah. So
the thing is, you're right though. Getting the volume of them, you've got the initial Kickstarters, and then as long as you can get some sort of reasonable plugging for it, shifting the other ones, that becomes basically your pension because you just keep selling them out as well. As long as you make a profit on those, you're okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm saying it myself, but I think the book is quite good. So when people from the Kickstarter get it and read it and stuff, I think it won't be difficult to sell the other ones. I mean, we'll have to sell them slightly more money than the Kickstarter ones. But I still think it'll be, there'll be like 350 of them to sell.
I think generally speaking, this is back to my old, what I have gradually had hammered into my head as commercial sense from various people, because I've always been very bad at the business side of things. But the one thing is, you sell it for as much as you can sell it for. So you've got the Kickstarter price, and that's because everyone put their faith in you and backed you. They get the cheap price. When you're selling them post Kickstarter, there's 2 reasons for selling them as much as possible. One is that the people who bought it on Kickstarter will be annoyed if you sell it too close to their price. The other one is you want to make as much money as possible off it. So, you sell it for whatever it will go for. And, it's a good book. It's worth it. It's, it's a subject matter that's going to be interesting to people, and like you say, once you got the positivity from a few people reading the Kickstarter version, you should shift them,
Yeah, it should be right.
Get Retro Gamer to review it if they haven't already.
Yeah, I'll send them a copy.
Yeah.
And you've got many more backers for the hardback version than the digital one, which I guess says to you, because I know originally you were thinking, I'll only do the hardback version because it's nice to have something to hold, etc. And I think then later date you thought, okay, we'll do digital as well. There's probably going to be a market. But actually, the people who only had the digital is actually a very small number. That sort of vindicates that real books are still a thing.
I was quite surprised, actually. I mean, I was very worried about the PDF. I didn't want to do it at all. And people persuaded me that I should, because it would be half of the pledges, and it wasn't at all. So, I mean, I'm quite pleased about that. It's much better in physical form. So,
What was the difference in price?
Well, the PDF was excruciatingly expensive at 25 quid. But, it had to be, really.
Yeah,
it's the content still. You take off the physical costs, and then you're not far off anyway. So, and I mean, it's the right price to put it at, but there were surprisingly few takers, which is good.
41.
Yeah,
just 41.
Yeah. I mean, I thought people would be keen to avoid the shipping problems, but no.
I thought we know this 41 may have been in some obscure location where they're thinking they'll never ship it here.
Yeah, well, that actually almost put me off the hardback. But what I'm thinking is I'll let Tony know to hang on to my copy for next time I'm in the UK, and then I can post it to me there.
Well, the funny thing is you're the test send actually for European postage. So
oh no, because it's not the postage that kills it for me. It's receiving it in Spain, and France has a similar thing with their post office. Anything coming from outside the EU, it's an automatic 10-20 euro clobber on top of the tax. It's a handling fee they automatically charge, and they actually, when the postman actually delivers it to you, he wants it in cash there and then. That or my local postman is a really clever con artist.
I think he might be, yeah.
But no, it's a thing. I mean, people have been getting, when someone daughter sent her a Christmas card and used a jiffy bag instead of an envelope because she didn't want it to get bent or damaged. And because that counted as a package rather than just a letter, it was an automatic €10 handling charge.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to have a lot of this, I guess.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm wherever I can, anything I'm ordering from the UK now, I try and keep in the UK until I can pick it up at some point on my travels.
Yeah.
Now I'm actually traveling again. Yeah.
Yeah. You went to Canada?
Yes, it was interesting. It was fun. It was Calgary, so it was weird compared to, I don't know. I mean, it's the first time I've been to Canada, so maybe the rest of Canada's that strange, but it was an interesting place.
Yeah. I quite liked it, but yeah. I mean, it's kind of a weird America, isn't
it? Yeah. I mean, Calgary. It was kind of like, it felt to me like New York, but with a bit more healthcare, and a few more yeehaws.
Yeah. And less extremes of social deprivation.
Not really.
No.
Not really. No. I mean, there was less extremes than I saw in San Francisco. San Francisco, it was literally the few blocks I walked from my very, very cheap and grotty motel to the Moscone Centre. I went past soup kitchen lines and charity shops with bars on their windows and stuff, and up until the Moscone Centre, which is like the super rich area and stuff. So that was quite impressive. New York was a bit more balanced. And the reason I think I didn't see that much in the way of poverty in New York is because New York had a habit at the time of every now and again just clearing all the homeless people out of town and dumping them somewhere out of town.
San Francisco.
Yeah, and whereas I don't think Calgary does that. So, they're pretty bit nicer on that. But everyone was generally rather nice there. It was quite good. Although I actually went to a Circle K, which if any Bill and Ted fans will kind of like, oh, Circle K. If you're outside of the US and Canada, of course, you've never been to a Circle K. You've just seen it on Bill and Ted, and so of course, a Circle K, cool. I'm waiting for the telephone booth to arrive and everything. And there's one near where my friends were, and I popped in, and the door was off its hinges, and it's because some junkie had come in that morning and ripped the door off its hinges as he was kind of arguing about something. So kind of like America, in some aspects, but generally it was rather nice. Yeah, and not cold as well. I managed to get there just before it went freezing.
It was snowing when I was there.
Yeah, it was literally. I got back, and a week later it was snowing. So I think I dodged a bullet there.
Yeah. I mean,
so talking of windows, let's talk about arcade windows. To get us back on topic a little bit. So I was trying to think about what the first arcade machine I ever used was. And it's actually, when I think of the gaming history of the stuff I actually owned in-house, I can remember my first sort of gaming device in the home was Pong, which the good old paddles and the beep, 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 and all that stuff. But the arcade machines, I don't think I ever had much of an opportunity to have sort of the 8-bit era stuff. It actually was 16-bit type era. Outrun was actually my first arcade experience, which I just had at the local pub.
And that's not far off before the arcades pretty much died.
Well, there we go. I got on board just at the right time.
It was a very short window. Yeah.
Talking of windows. But yeah, Outrun, I remember very specifically, and the novelty of sort of being very young, kneeling up on the tippy toes of my feet and then holding the steering wheel and having this low and high gear at the side, and the novelty factor alone. But the graphics, compared to anything you might have had at home at the time, were far superior. It just felt so futuristic. And then not long after that, my parents actually were renting a building which they had as a cafe. And at the cafe at the front of the building, in like the front area where people would eat, was an arcade machine, which was very nice for me. And for 20p, I could play Golden Axe.
Oh, that dates it just in the amount of money. Dates
20p.
it automatically.
20p. Try going to an arcade and spending 20p now to play a game where you're actually doing it for commercial interest.
Dates it for me because when I played, it was 10p.
10p. Well, okay.
Yeah.
See, inflation has always been a problem. But yeah, my meager 20p, although it felt meager at the time, I popped lots of 20p's. I'd constantly go to my mum and dad and say, "Oh, can I have another 20p? I want to get a bit further in this game." And I was still young, so I hadn't quite got my gaming chops yet. But I did manage to complete Golden Axe on a single 20p piece all the way to the end. And then, of course, the Mega Drive eventually had Golden Axe as part of it, and it was very faithful to that arcade version of it. Even had a little bit extra at the end because it was quite actually a short game, really. But it was pretty amazing having something at home that would be able to play an arcade style quality. And that was always the appeal for things like the Mega Drive. But in terms of you guys, what was your sort of first recollections of arcades?
I remember a racing game called Continental Circus.
Ooh,
Continental Circus.
Yeah, and it was meant to be called Continental Circuit, but it was a translation error. That was kind of an early outrun, and that was really good. I remember playing that in Hull. There was another one. There was like a Gallagher type thing. It was called Truxton or something like that. Truck something. I'm sure. We used to play a lot of that kind of thing. Late 80s. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, first one I played as an actual arcade machine was actually Space Invaders, a proper green screen with the band of plastic to change the colour. Space Invaders. When we were on holiday in Cornwall. But the oldest one I played was Space War. I actually played a proper vector graphic Space War, an ice skating rink once when I went on a school trip to an ice skating rink, and they had Space War then. I'd never seen it, and I thought that's weird, and it was a really good game. It's one of the oldest computer games going. It even predates the home Pong machines, that's a really, really good one. That was actually a later version of it, or whatever. It just happened to be in this ice skating rink that still sat there.
Yeah, there was always one in an ice skating rink. There was I think at the swimming pool there was one called Tasmania. Do you remember that one?
Vaguely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not the based off the Tasmanian Devil Warner Brothers character, Looney Tunes character, but a separate one.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I played a lot of the early ones. My favourites were the cocktail cabinet ones. There was an evolved Space Invaders that you could play 2-player, and it flipped the screen upside down each time you switched players. So you took it in turns to play. That was actually in colour. And the bowling alley that we all frequented when we were in Hong Kong had 3 machines as cocktail cabinets and 1 stand-up or sit-down machine. They swapped that one out every now and again. So they were the big deal kind of then. And they'd cycle the games between various sort of ones then. But we had the original, was it pole position? The top-down plan view scrolling car one where you're dodging between the cars as it scrolls. It was that was a classic. And home machines, that's when we were playing stuff on Apple II. So it was less arcade quality stuff, but there was a lot more unusual stuff as well. And the early things like Lode Runner and so on. And of course all the early text adventure games, which of course you wouldn't get in arcades. Definitely. But the other one is in Hong Kong, the arcades, you had this mix of mainstream arcade machines and things like Space Ace was just coming out, or Dragon's Lair, I think it was the first one out on, with Laserdisc. And then a whole bunch of these arcade machines that were basically Apple IIs reboxed in arcade machines with all the things like all the Broderbund titles and stuff as arcade games and the things you could put 10 cents in, or sorry, $1 because it was about 10p for the Hong Kong dollar at the time, put $1 in to play. So there was this sort of knockoff arcade kind of thing going on.
mean, the beauty of arcade machines was that the philosophy of the design was the complete opposite of like AAA, because you had to get players hooked and completely into it immediately. Whereas, I mean, when I buy, which I don't very often now, but every time I try and play a AAA RPG or something like that, which I think is going to be good, I usually give up after about 2 hours of fighting with the UI and the menus and stuff that I don't understand, and having played no game whatsoever so far, and I think that's just like bad design, but I mean deliberate but bad design. And
well, it
had to get you hooked, didn't it? Otherwise, you'd walk away
and
not
it,
got
and it
another
had to
20
explain how to play it in a screen
immediately. Yeah.
Yeah, you had to have a screen or a little scroller that explained what you had to do while the game was in its attract mode, and if you didn't understand it from that, it wouldn't get you to play.
Yeah. I mean that's the great design philosophy, I think. I mean that's how we should be designing games.
It's a good exercise. I did actually do it on some later games, or actually tried that as recently as Spinny Wings on the iPhone, where you just have an attract mode that just shows what you're supposed to do, and what who the enemies are, and this kind of thing. They're just scrolling across with how many points they are. It's fun as an attract mode for starters. But it also, gives you the general idea of what you're meant to be doing.
And if the game actually is that easy, then that's a win, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah. Because again, you can get straight into it. The difference is, of course, that with designing for, say, for instance, phone games, mobile games, where you want the player to be able to get into it ridiculously easily again. But now you want to keep them there, so you keep it easy to keep them playing. Whereas arcade machines, you get them in as look, this game looks really fun and easy to play. Bang, you're dead. Oh, another 10p. Bang, you're dead.
Yeah, but the thing is, if you couldn't go too many extra 10 pences without succeeding, right?
No. It was back to the classic game design thing of basically a little bit of easing them in with a learning curve, then a bit of coast, and then slap them with a bastard level.
Yeah.
And
then when you die, you have another go, and it's 50-50 if you're going to do it or not. And another 10p, and you really got to do it. Otherwise, you go, "Oh, sorry, I'll come back," and that's it. You've lost the player and the stream of money. So
you've got to have that belief that you can beat it.
Yeah,
that was the important bit.
And then your belief's got to come true.
Yeah. Whereas this is what I didn't like about Dragon's Lair and Space Ace. It was basically die. Remember what you did and don't do that. Or hit the button at exactly the right time. And it wasn't so much learning stuff as memorizing stuff, which is very different from other games.
Yeah, I think that just did. I mean, it was different, wasn't it? It was full motion video, which at the time, graphics were good, but this brought a level of flipping it. This looks amazing. This is like playing a cartoon. And you had to, like you say, if you didn't get the timing right, even if you knew the direction, you had to press on the controller, you're dead.
Yeah.
And it was really keep trying the same thing and knowing left here, forward here, right here, down here.
It had the other effect of arcade games at the time, which was very good at, which is a very good game to watch over the shoulder. That was one of the other things that attractions of certain types of arcade games that did well. Outrun was a very good one for that, in that you could watch somebody else playing and it was fun. Even if you weren't actually controlling it, you could be there egging them on and enjoying it as well, which was quite a good thing with those. So early things of Twitch streaming, where nowadays you just watch people online doing it.
But one of the main appeals about an arcade machine was, yes, a lot had the joystick and the buttons, which isn't too far removed from having a game controller. But, the Outruns had a steering wheel and a gear stick. Flight simulators would have the sort of the flight yokes and whatnot.
Yeah, Centipede had a trackball.
Well, there you go. And some of the motorbike ones, you actually sat on like a fake motorbike and leaned.
Yeah.
So, you couldn't get something like that easily in the house. So it was always a nice thing to experience, even if it was only a brief visit to the seaside. Good old Skegness and its arcade.
Yeah.
Spent many a pound there.
Pac-Man, of course. I love Pac-Man.
Yeah, Pac-Man, yeah. Although isn't Mrs. Pac-Man, or is it Miss Pac-Man?
Miss Pac-Man was very, very, very clever. Basically, put a bow on the sprite and add a 0 to the scores on the end. That's what they made, because people at the time scoring was a big deal. You were either a scorer or an explorer, and certain games were definitely scorer games, like Pac-Man especially. And for Miss Pac-Man, they realized that players did actually like the whole thing of seeing they were being rewarded by getting a large score. So they quite literally, they didn't even actually change the numbers that were stored. They just graphically drew an extra 0 at the end of the line, so that it looked like you had a bigger score.
Dear, oh dear. And what was the obsession, do you think, to have any time you would enter your initials? It was always 3 characters.
Yeah, because of storage. It's quite simply, you wanted to have, ideally you wanted to have something that didn't take up too much memory. And if you wanted a lot of characters listed, I mean, in the early games, just getting a few players listed was, you need to do a maximum of 3 bytes each. In fact, they probably got it down to 2 bytes if they were sneaky. It also became, the other problem there is you've got to wait for somebody with a joystick and a button to scroll through characters and put them in. Do you want to do that for a complete name or with extra? Later games did start doing 6 and 8 characters. I mean, that's how my online nickname came about, is because it fitted within the 8 characters of the game we played at the bowling alley. And even later games started having things like special characters, like hearts and stuff, kind of as well, because that was extra bling. But every time you do that, you slow down getting the next person to put 10p
in. There you go. You see, I knew you guys would know this. This sounds as terrible as when you're trying to use a virtual keyboard on those, you got your smart device like your Amazon sticks or whatnot. You got the virtual keyboard that pops up, enter your email address, and then you really regret having a long email address. Add your password, and then you realize you've got one of those generated passwords. So you've got uppercase, you've got lowercase, you've got special symbols. It's a nightmare. So I'm so glad they've started now referring you to a link where you're signing on your phone, and then you just enter the correct code. That's much easier. But before they got to do that, they still absolutely don't support that feature. It's a horrible process. That makes a lot of sense for arcade machines where you want them to get off and let the next paying customer on.
But what a lot of them started doing was they made the score, the name entry, entertaining. They did different. They experimented with all sorts of different types of ways of entering your 3 letters or 8 letters or whatever, to the point where that was actually quite pretty to look at. So again, the more people you're pulling around you to look at the game, the more wanting to have a go. So even though it's using a little bit of time up that someone could be putting 10p in, you're getting more people to put the 10p in. So there's probably a lot of, I mean, there's some of the guys who actually designed these back then, probably a lot of extra psychology that they were thinking about. That, or they just had a producer coming in and said, no, we want more money in, work out a way of putting more money in.
I remember specifically the Sega Rally Championship one where you had the car and it would spin and the characters would spin in kind of a 360, and that's how you selected it with the, makes sense to me. And that was always like, I almost want to play the game again to enter higher up the leaderboard regardless, because it's fun just to put my name in.
Yeah. I was lucky because when it was 3 letters, because I don't actually have a middle initial, but I use the letter A. So I'm AA, and I just needed to change the last letter. So I could just do it quickly. Because they always defaulted to AAA.
Yeah, that's good.
At least you had a chance maybe of getting on the leaderboards back then, because when you think of how many millions of people are playing these games, if you want to be in the top 10, you can almost forget it, can't you? But at least at the arcade, you may have had some fighting chance with a hell of a lot of practice, but nowadays...
It's like PUBG. If you've not been playing PUBG since it came out, you're basically cannon fodder. You're going there just to get shot at. You're never, ever going to win anything. You're just there to get shot at by the people who know what they're doing. Doesn't matter how much you learn, you're tough. They're always going to be better than you.
Exactly. I mean, I was 10 years a freelance journalist, and I specialised in gaming and technology back then. And that was before I had full-time employment, where it was kind of, that's when it was more full-time. So I had time to play games. And I was pretty good back then. I was in I'm dating myself here, playing the original Unreal Tournament, and I was in a clan, and I was pretty good at that. But, now I go on, because I've got a full-time job. If I get a chance to play in an evening, it's a miracle. I mean, my wife probably plays my Xbox more than I do. But regardless, I don't get the time to play that often nowadays. I probably will jump onto my Xbox for a little bit to play a single-player game, or go on some of my retro stuff, like my Sega Mega Drive's plugged in permanently. I'll still have a good go on that. And that's my 10, 15, maybe 20-minute blast in an evening if I get the chance. So if like you say, if you go onto an online multiplayer game and play like the latest Call of Duty or whatever, I'll do okay, but I'll spawn dead, spawn a couple of seconds dead, find the weapon I've been searching for the whole 10-minute round, and then as soon as I collect the weapon, dead.
So you're not going to be buying this new VR headset that one of the Oculus guys designed that kills you if you die in the game.
It's funny you should say that. So I remember trying a VR headset when I was in primary school. And gosh, when would that be? That'd be pre-1990. Yeah, it'd be pre-1990. And it was a really big, heavy thing. And it was it was just basic shapes, no textures. And, it was really novel, but it was so heavy, this headset, and so huge. But you could say they were thinking it had some legs to be like a real future thing. And they were saying, oh, yeah, in the next 10 years, everyone will have a VR headset. I'm thinking, I hope it's not as heavy as this one. And then a couple of weeks ago, and I've not really tried VR since then. I've tried like the cardboard where you put your phone in.
Oh,
ones,
yeah.
Which were amusing for a little while too. But my friend's got, I think it's the Oculus Rift. And it was a lot of fun, but I just couldn't imagine myself using it a lot. Given the limited time I have amount to playing games as it is right now, having a VR headset is another thing. And they're not that cheap, quite expensive, particularly the standalone ones. But, it was enjoyable. It was nice. I played that Beat Saber where you got like lightsabers and you're hitting blocks to the rhythm of the music, but you have to swipe with your hand in a particular direction to hit these blocks. Great fun, but I think the novelty would wear off quite quickly, and I'd end up going back to just seeing it on my TV screen, sitting back comfortably on my sofa, which is why I think Kinect... the motion controls for the PlayStation, and to a certain extent the Nintendo Wii, I think it had its time, but it wasn't like this is the main peripheral to how you will play games. Or as Facebook is hoping, you'll use it for almost everything, including work, where you can have a fake 3 monitors in front of you. No, it's all right. I can have 3 real monitors in front of me. That's fine.
Well, that was one of the complaints we had doing one of the vision camera games for Microsoft for the 360 before the Kinect came out, was that people complained that they couldn't play the game in the dark.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course not. It needs to see you. It's like,
So that'd be the vision camera, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Little tiny thing. Really, it was a nice little thing.
It was a basic high def web camera, really, just tweaked for the 360. And it was kind of a stopgap before Kinect came out, because they'd already started working on Kinect, but it was going to be a bigger project. So they needed some stuff to come out for that. So and we'd already been doing the stuff for the FaceTime camera for Apple, for the iSight. So and they got us in to do some stuff for that, which was a lot of fun, actually. The one thing about, I was never a fan of Microsoft themselves, but the Microsoft Games team are actually they're really good. They know their stuff, and they actually play games a lot, which is important. I think there's a lot of games companies that you kind of get the impression they don't play that many games.
No, that's one thing Microsoft has really going for it. I mean, a lot of developers say the support and the platform, maybe less the Series X, which seems to have a few problems at the minute in terms of PlayStation 5, which is meant to be technically on paper slower, can sometimes outperform it, which is unfortunate when you're an Xbox owner. I'm not a fanboy, but still, you like your console to be a little bit ahead if possible. But the Xbox Live,
I think the thing with me is it's always been a game-driven thing where I get the one that the games I want are on. And so far, nothing yet has persuaded me to buy a PlayStation since PlayStation 2. It's generally all my favourite games seem to so far have been on Xbox.
That's interesting. I mean, there's some really key titles I love on PlayStation, which are hard to give up. Although, thankfully, quite a lot of them are coming to the PC now, which is really helpful. But Horizon Zero Dawn is a great game. The Uncharted series is a great set of games. It depends what you're into. I mean, there's God of War. The later ones are really good as well. But on the Xbox side, although they've got the Halos and the Forza Horizons, they've really got a first-party game problem at the minute. They just haven't got enough titles coming out compared to Sony. And that's something even Phil Spencer of the Microsoft ilk is saying in next year is going to be different. There's going to be many more first-party games, which it really needs. But I do remember that Xbox Vision camera. There was two things it was really useful. You could have your live video. So if you were playing like Uno on Xbox Live Arcade, you could have your video playing and actually see people as you're talking, which was a bit risky depending on who came and joined your game. And then the other thing was you could get it to map your face a little bit, and then that face would appear in the game.
Rainbow Six did that very well.
Exactly.
And it was actually useful in Rainbow Six because when you were playing it 3-player cooperative with your mates, and you could look either side and know who's where, and it was just great. That was a good thing.
Fight Night, the boxing game, did the same thing, and I have to say, it did actually look very like me, which was even more worrying when someone's punching in the face really hard, and it did the super slow-mo animation of going. Very weird to see a virtual James with that happening to me in slow motion. But there were other games that definitely didn't do that well, where you'd get some really freaky results, which unfortunately I never took any screenshots or camera shots of those days. But yeah, when it worked, it was great. But when it didn't, it was quite humorous.
Yeah. But I think the killer feature at the moment for Xbox is still Game Pass. That's the thing that does it for me. I've tried so many different games now on Game Pass purely because it's like, well, now what am I paying my money for? I've got to try something different.
Yeah. And the new Monkey Island's coming to Game Pass soon.
Yes.
Which I haven't had the chance to play yet, so I'm looking forward to that. What about you, Tony? What have your latest? I mean, you've got your Steam Deck. Have you had much time to play that before this book?
I like my Steam Deck. None of this console stuff for me. I play Xbox. I play Minecraft on the Xbox. That's it. I like my Steam Deck. Yeah, I'm playing Hobbs Barrow on Steam Deck.
And what's that about?
That is it's the adventure game of the moment. Quite a nice little thing. Good story. Very low tech, which is good. So all the efforts in the writing and the characters and stuff. Yeah, it's quite nice. I haven't just started it, but it's doing very well. Works perfectly on the Steam Deck. So that's good. That's where I am.
Yeah, I'm just watching the excavation of Hobbs Barrow.
That's it.
Is a folk horror narrative-driven adventure. Explore the isolated moors of rural Victorian England as you uncover the mysteries of Hobbs Barrow. The answers lie in the soil. Blimey.
Yeah, it's nicely done.
Good.
Very nice.
I like the developer name, Cloak and Dagger Games. So, what have I been playing recently? I've just been playing my Mega Drive. I've been playing shmups. I've not really played shmups on the Mega Drive, so I've just been going through a few of those. Why did I pick that sentence? Through a few of those. I'll never say that again if I can avoid it. But I still love my Mega Drive. There's something about that 16-bit era, and I think it was playing Crackshot, and that was my first experience of playing 16-bit era games. I'd gone from 8-bit, and although you could recognise if it was a cartoon character, if it was Donald Duck or whoever else, you'd say, it's a fair approximation of what they'd look like if I watched the cartoon. But once I got to the Mega Drive, it was on a friend's. He had just the cartridge. He had no manual or anything. And just that one game for the Mega Drive. So while my dad was working, I played this Mega Drive all day pretty much. I had this one cartridge, so I put my cartridge in and I turned it on, and lo and behold, there was what, to me as a youngster, Donald Duck, actual Donald Duck walking across the screen. And for me, it was like mind blown. So I must have played that game for 8 hours with a small break for something to eat. And I was hooked. And I kept getting stuck. I had no manual. And I didn't realise you had to press the start button, which was the crucial bit of it, to change some of the options and to fly to different destinations. And then I couldn't figure out, I must have skipped some of the conversation and didn't realise I was given a key, so I couldn't open the pyramid door, which came a little later. And it was just some silly things. But I kept persevering, and it was so good. And even now, I'll play that game over and over again because it's just fun, and I'm going to do a video on it soon and have a bit of a sort of love fest of that sort of 16-bit era when those pixels could actually really represent something that looked like a cartoon. They had enough colours, they had enough pixel resolution, and it just looked great.
It's a golden age.
I'm still stuck in 16-bit.
Yeah. I mean, the stuff that Stu used to draw, that was so good, so good.
I mean, the cannon fodder stuff. That I just wish they'd do something with cannon fodder. A cannon fodder 3, 4, whatever they want to call it. Just bring something back. Just do something. I look what they did with the Command and Conquer, with the very first one. They redrew all the sprites and everything, but it's still sprite based. It hasn't gone polygons or anything like that.
I mean, even just releasing the 2 cannon fodders has just tidied up and re-released on current platforms, just so we can play them again. That's the thing there. I think
it would do very well, wouldn't it? And you could do a special box edition, do 5,000 of them. It would make commercial sense. Perfect.
Yeah, I'm sure even without that, Microsoft would give them a large wodge of money just to put it on Game Pass. It'd cover the cost of development and then some, probably.
Yeah. Oh, it would do hugely well. Yeah. Yeah. I really do think you can go back to all these classic games and just continue, as they were. Just continue. The point where they died because the fashions changed. You can reverse right back to that point. Continue as you were, with good solid things, gameplay and stuff, and it would be perfectly viable because people don't care about whether it's polygons now, do they? As long as it's good.
The scary bit is my brother Adam showed me a picture today of the latest AI generation thing. Is AI generated pixel art.
Oh yeah, we've been playing with that.
And it's the same. I think he noticed as well, though. It's the same as most of the other AI generated artwork. You can see where it's lifted stuff from the web. Mainly because it has the stock image text mangled across it a lot of the time, but a lot of them seem to be just training it off the web. And in fact, Microsoft's being sued over their AI stuff for what's it called, thingy Code Hub, whatever, GitHub, because they've got this AI generated code completer that apparently you can start coding it, and it will actually give you code for what you're trying to do without Clippy, which would make it worse. But apparently, because it's essentially ripping code from everything that's on GitHub, including stuff that the rights for it are that you're supposed to credit the author, and of course it rips the code while stripping the author details out, or it's code that has to have other so basically even the fact that it's trained on that, even if it's not using it, technically these guys threaten that's against their license. So Microsoft are getting sued over it. So interesting. There's lots of interesting ethics when you start doing all this kind of stuff.
It's Blade Runner has started to happen. Is it a real owl? It's starting.
So of your catalogue of games, gents, of which there've been many, which is the one you feel like it's probably been a little underappreciated in the modern time we live in, like you think would be great now to reintroduce?
Looking at my bank balance, I'd say all of them. the thing is, you've got games that were underappreciated at the time, and games that you had personal favourites, and this is the thing. But there's also games that I've done that I probably wouldn't want to revisit just because they were a lot of hard work. And it's one like Jet Strike, for instance. A lot of people say, "Oh, you should do Jet Strike again," and I would kind of love to do Jet Strike again if someone was funding it, because I could never afford to do that again. Because and the other problem is it is a game which has 60 different aircraft from all actual aircraft from all around the world, of which nowadays about 50 of them, the manufacturers of them would be after me for a license fee, which they didn't used to do. And it started, like Grumman, one of the first ones who started coming after people for, we want a license fee for our plane's image in your game. But it's from World War II. It doesn't matter. It's got our name on it. So there's this whole thing of a lot of games we used to do back then where you could quite happily have whatever, fighter jet or whatever in it. You just couldn't do nowadays purely because you wouldn't be able to afford it, unless you had some stupidly enormous budget and didn't care about making a profit, So, and again, it's also the problem with a lot of the games. It's like there's some of my older games I'd like to do again, but I wouldn't like to have to try and make them marketable to make money in the current climate in terms of how you'd have to make money off them. I wouldn't want to monetize them the way a lot of stuff does nowadays. It just wouldn't work. It's just like the games are designed differently from what how you monetize. So there's a couple of games I didn't make, but I designed that I would like to do again. And there's a couple of those I've got in the bag waiting for one day, I'll get around to doing them. I'd definitely like to do Airburst properly again, because the 360 version of Airburst was brilliant. It was the de facto best version of it, and it never got released. It fell foul of the Mr. Digger debacle, where all of a sudden any games playing online had to have absolutely no lag at all. Somehow miraculously had to time travel all their packets back to make it all synchronize up perfectly, despite the fact that other players in Australia or something, it was a big fuss about nothing really, and it impacted all the other games in development at the time. And because it was network multiplayer, it just had to have a complete and utter rewrite. And by the time we got to nearly getting it released, the iPhone had come along, and our publishers wanted us to do flip fishing. So, they said, just we'll pay off whatever you spent on it. We just want you to do this, So we had to just put it on hold, and technically it was never cancelled. It's just been on hold for the last 20 years, or however long it is. 2007 so about 15 years or something. It's been on hold.
Gosh, what about you, Tony? I don't know. I mean, no particular game. I don't think. I mean, my whole theme at the moment is taking ideas and styles from the old days and just carrying on. So, I mean, that's what I'm actually doing in real life. So, picking bits from old games and putting them into a more modern platform, but still 2D, but without the restrictions. I mean, that's something I'm interested in. Hopefully can find some way of succeeding at it.
So, how far along with your shmup have we got now?
Well, my shmup's kind of changed. It's kind of changed. It's not a shmup anymore. It's
oh gosh, that is a big departure then in genre. Okay, what's it now?
It's more. It's what you would call an action adventure.
Oh, okay.
The shmup is parked. The shmup might go back to the shmup. But Unity, it was Unity, and I just got depressed by Unity and decided to stop. so it's parked. I might go back to it if I'm. If I'm rich enough to buy the graphics I'll need for it, I'll revisit. But then some of the ideas in it I'm pulling across into the action adventure anyway. So it's not as wild as it sounds what I've done. But yeah, I've kind of switched genre a bit. That's what I do.
Well, the good news, Tony, there's no time limit pressure on you. There's no publisher over your shoulder saying it's got to be out next week, and there's no crunch. It's just you doing it at your leisure and you're enjoying it, hopefully, the process, rather if you change your mind or anything else.
Yeah. Well, the other goal in life, of course, is to not be publisher pressured. So yeah, definitely.
Well, it's been lovely talking to you, gentlemen. We'll have to do it again soon sometime. I'm sure if Stu is watching, he'll be very appreciative of mentioning Cannon Fodder again, as he did all the graphics for that game. So if you're watching, Stu, hello. But otherwise, thank you everyone for watching the Game and Gadget podcast, and we will see you next time.